This is no doubt one of the greatest rivalry games in the country and across all of sports. Hello, everybody. You're listening to the College Sports Superfan. I've got the highlights from last year's game up, and you guys will have to let me know in the comments whether you like, the highlights from the previous matchup of these teams or whether you like the highlights of previous matchups from the teams in the current season like I have in my previous two videos. You guys let me know what you prefer in the comments below. But this was the matchup from last year's Red River Rivalry. So let's get into this season's Red River Rivalry, though. Texas got to have the bye week at the perfect time, the bye week to prepare for their biggest rival, and also they got to avoid upset Saturday. They got to sit back and watch all these other teams, Alabama, Tennessee, even teams like USC, lose these shocking games and go tumbling down. Michigan, of course, as well, to Washington. And Texas just got to sit back and rub their hands because they knew they were going to be number one in the country. And right now, it's pretty tricky to make a top 10. But there's one thing that's for certain. Texas is the no doubt number one team in the country right now. They're averaging 45 points per game and only allowing 7 points per game. That is extremely dominant. And to be fair, a lot of their competition hasn't been great, but they do have some impressive wins, like dominating Michigan on the road, and that's still, even with Michigan's loss, is an impressive win. The other big news for Texas is that Quinn Ewers returns at quarterback, and Ewers has played in two previous Red River rivalry games. He won one in dominant fashion, and then there was the one last year where they lost in a thriller. But Ewers has 691 yards, a 73% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And again, keep in mind with his numbers, he's missed the last couple of games, almost the last 3 games. And Arch Manning did a great job filling in for him as well. But the running back position is a little bit more of a question mark for this Texas team. Obviously, C.J. Baxter was supposed to be the guy this season. He was going to be awesome, and he tore his ACL in training camp, sadly, before the season even began. But that running back position has become a bit more clear. Jaden Blue has become the main running back with 239 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, but he does have 2 fumbles. But he also has 87 yards receiving and 2 receiving touchdowns. But one guy that's been very impressive is freshman Jarek Gibson, who's got a ton of speed. He's got 226 yards, 4.9 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. He also has a fumble. And then they've got Quentin Wisner, who's got 160 yards, which is 5 yards per carry and a touchdown. So they kind of rotate between those three, but obviously Blue's the main one. Gibson's kind of right after that, and then Wisner is the third back. And they just keep it a good rotation, which honestly not a bad move. Keeps guys healthy as well. And then at the receiver position, Texas is absolutely loaded, whether they have Ewers as quarterback, whether they have Manning at quarterback. Doesn't really matter. Of course, Ewers is going to start this game, but all their receivers are so good. Isaiah Bond has 364 yards and 3 touchdowns, plus a long rushing touchdown from the previous game against Mississippi State. DeAndre Moore has 126 yards and 3 touchdowns. Matthew Golden has 223 yards and 3 touchdowns. Freshman Ryan Wingo has 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this offense, this spread offense that Steve Sarkisian has, is elite. It is absolutely incredible. And then on defense, the Texas defense, again, as I've said, they've only been allowing 7 points per game. So this defense has gotten much better. Used to be a disaster with previous head coaches. Sarkisian, an offensive genius, has put together a good defensive staff, and they've made this defense much better. Let's start on the defensive line. Vernon Broughton has 12 tackles and a fumble recovery, and Alfred Collins has 11 tackles. So the defensive line, a little bit underwhelming, could still be a bit better in that area. But at linebacker, they've got some really good players. Anthony Hill has 31 tackles and an interception. Colin Simmons, who's a freshman, has 18 tackles and 4 sacks. And David Gabenda has 28 tackles. So those three linebackers, generally pretty young across the board, but are very, very, very good. And in the secondary, they're really good there too. Jalen uh, Wilbo has 25 tackles. Andrew Makuba has 19 tackles and an interception. Jade Barron has 18 tackles and an interception and a fumble recovery. Michael Taff, who had a lot of hype heading into this season, has 21 tackles. And here's the other big key for Texas is special teams. Kicker Bert Auburn has made all 31 of his extra points. He hasn't had to try too many field goals because that's just how dominant Texas has been so far. But he has had to try 31 extra points, and he's made all 31 of them. So that's a very good sign for Texas there. But Texas does have a freshman punter, and he's just been okay. So that is just one slight concern there. As for the Oklahoma Sooners, let's get into how OU has been doing and how they've been adjusting to the SEC. They haven't been too bad. Obviously, they were, down by 10 points against Tennessee, and if they had put Michael Hawkins in sooner, who knows? Maybe things could be a little bit different in that game. They've beaten Auburn, so they do have an SEC win under their belt as well. Michael Hawkins has 310 yards, 62% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 101 yards rushing, and a rushing touchdown. So those stats are not, blow you away, amazing, and I totally get that. But here's the thing. He has no turnovers. Jackson Arnold was a turnover machine. He had like 12 turnovers in just the span of 3 games. So they put Hawkins in. He's just a true freshman, but they're putting him in and saying, okay, do your thing. Do not turn the ball over. We can win by winning low-scoring games thanks to our great defense and just by playing clean football. And Oklahoma has looked a lot better since he's been in. And with his running ability, he does add a new dynamic to this offense. And the running back room has been pretty interesting. Javante Barnes is 199 yards, which is 3.5 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns. He also has a receiving touchdown. But Taylor Tatum, to me, is really rising up fast. He's got 116 yards, which is 6.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. He does have a fumble, but he does have a receiving touchdown. And then at wide receiver, this receiver room really surprising to me for Oklahoma for a lot of reasons. So Deion Burks came in from Purdue, and he's clearly become the #1 receiver for Oklahoma. He's got 201 yards with 3 touchdowns. And then Brennan Thompson is basically the #2 receiver. He's got 106 yards and a touchdown. But the rest of this receiver room has not looked very impressive. And what shocks me is there's so many guys that were key pieces at receiver for this team last year that are still on the team this year. Like, for example, Andrell Anthony, who's a veteran. He played for Michigan and then played for Oklahoma last year. He's barely done anything this season. And Nick Anderson, who was a superstar freshman, I believe he led the team in receiving touchdowns. And of course, in this game that you're seeing here, he catches the game-winning touchdown in last year's Red River game. Nick Anderson has 0 stats, 0 catches. So I don't get what it is this season. The receiver room just has been very weak. I get that the quarterback problems have been a major factor in that, but they've got to find some way to consistently generate more offense to keep up with Texas in this game, because we know Texas is going to put some points on the board, even though Oklahoma has an elite level defense. Let's talk about that defense. R. Mason Thomas has 12 tackles with 6.5 TFLs. Ethan Downs has 10 tackles and a fumble recovery. Demonic Williams has 12 tackles, and DeJoun Terry has 10 tackles and a fumble recovery. So overall, I'd say this Oklahoma defensive line has been pretty good, probably a little bit better than Texas's defensive line at this point. At linebacker, they've got some really great linebackers. Let's just start with Danny Stutzman, who's a superstar. 40 tackles so far this season. 40. And then they also have Kip Lewis, 21 tackles and a pick six. Samuel Omosino has 19 tackles. So this linebacker group is really, really good. Texas might be slightly deeper, but honestly, I'd say OU and Texas pretty even on that one. And then here's the secondary. They have their superstars in the secondary as well. Robert Spears Jennings has 35 tackles, 3.5 tackles for a loss, and a fumble recovery, and an interception. And then you got Billy Bowman, who's got 23 tackles and a fumble recovery and an interception himself. Then you got guys like Woody Washington, who has 15 tackles, Peyton Bowen, who's got 14 tackles, Kenny Walker, who has 15 tackles and an interception. So this secondary is really good too. At all three levels, Oklahoma is a really, really great defense, and it makes sense based on how Brent Venables has been, not only as a player, but then as a coach, as defensive coordinator with Clemson. He built some elite defenses for the Tigers that helped them win 2 college football playoff national championships. And now he's basically doing the same thing at Oklahoma. And then on special teams, they've got a really great punter. Luke Ozinga has one that went 63 yards this season, and his average is 46 yards per punt. He's got 13 punts that have gone inside the 20. So far, he's been one of the best punters in the country. So that's definitely an advantage for the Sooners there. But Texas has the kicker advantage. Special teams, pretty even right there. Texas currently is favored by 14 points. But here's what's interesting as we'll get into the history is typically this rivalry is not more than a one-score game. Typically, this is one of the best rivalries in the history of college football. And as I just talked about these teams here, Texas clearly has the edge on offense. Oklahoma, I'd say, has the edge on defense, and then both of them have certain strengths and weaknesses when it comes to special teams. So I think this is going to be an even game, and history shows that it should be. Since 2014, every single matchup, with the exception of 2022, which was a 49-0 blowout for Texas, which was their biggest win over Oklahoma in these two teams' histories. Quinn Ewers was the quarterback for that one. But every single game since 2014 in this building, because again, 2018 Big 12 championship wasn't the Red River Rivalry game. That was the Big 12 championship. That was a 2-score game. But besides that game, besides 2022, every game since 2014 has been a 1-score game. And during that span, Oklahoma has really dominated Texas. They've won 8 out of the last 11 matchups going back to 2014. But Texas leads the all-time series 63-51. And they also have 3 ties, of course, back in the past. They first met in 1900, which was a 28-2 Texas victory. But again, overall, Oklahoma has dominated the series lately. So what do I think is going to happen? I think this has been a year of chaos, all right? I think it's been a year of chaos, and I don't think Texas is dominant enough to go undefeated the entire season. I think they're going to go 11-1 this year. I don't think they're going to go 12-0. But this is not that one loss. I'm going to say it's close again, but Texas wins by 7. Their offense is just so good. It's so explosive. The Oklahoma offense still needs a lot of work. It's not just that Hawkins has to get more comfortable. The ground game with Barnes and Tatum just hasn't been very impressive. That has to get a lot better as well. The protection has to be better on Hawkins. Also, more receivers besides just Deion Burks have to step it up. So the offense still has a lot of weaknesses. I think the defense for Oklahoma is going to help keep this a 1-score game, but ultimately Quinn Ewers' Texas passing offense is just way, way too explosive and way too good, and they're going to win this game by 7. Thank you guys so much for watching the College Sports Superfan. We've still got a few more games coming out this week. This is going to be one heck of a weekend for college football. Please like and subscribe.